Prolonged sitting increases the risk of death by up to 40%. Can we really compare smoking and sitting?
Increase the risk of all-cause mortality, increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases and even diabetes, and can increase to weight gain. But why is it happening? When we sit for longer duration and we accumulate inflammation along the way, and our mitochondria, they don't work efficiently.
What is osteopenia and osteoporosis?
Osteopenia is basically a decline in bone mineral density. Osteoporosis is when the bone mineral density has declined to an extent where your risk of fracture increases. And amount of protein intake, we should make sure at least with every meal there is 20 to 30 grams per meal. The best things that we can do to improve our focus and work on both mind and body training is any kind of sport that involves racket.
Moving on to 60s, what should we do?
Number one, your muscle protein synthesis has declined so much. Your hormones have declined. You have lost type 2 muscle fibers. Vitamin and mineral absorption has declined. Gut health has declined. If people are falling more often while they are aging, it means they have lost alignment, balance, they have lost their proprioception.
What are the non-negotiable nutrients and vitamins needed to protect the musculoskeletal health?
Good vitamin D, calcium, phosphate, magnesium, chromium.
We see some 50 to 60-year-old people running marathons, while same age group people are struggling to climb stairs. Why do you think? What is the difference between these two sets of people?
So you're saying some people are frail and some people are not.
Yes.
But if you're thinking frailty is equal to aging or frailty is happening because of aging, then we're all wrong. And the science is proving that it is wrong. Okay. Frailty is no more a destiny. It's what people choose. It's basically a phenotype which is happening because of accumulation of all the things that they have done in their life. Most of the times, why people can't take a flight of stairs is because of a lot of components, of course. One is most common thing is inactivity. Second is undernutrition. Then the things that we accumulate because of aging, it could be mitochondrial dysfunction, it could be cartilage damage, then it could be inflammation. So why we behave when we are aging, how we behave when we are aging, it's the accumulation of what we do throughout the life, starting from your activity, your sleep, your nutrition, your mitochondrial function, your cardiovascular fitness. Since you're talking about a 70-year-old who is very active, agile, and is running marathons, I assume this is a person who is not taking his inactivity, who is taking his inactivity seriously and is trying to push himself and is trying to move more. I think this is a person who is focusing on eating a very balanced portion. When I say balanced, I think this person is more protein aware and more fiber aware. I think this is a person who is accumulating his VO2 max and his metabolic engine is becoming more efficient. I think this is the person who has more mitochondrial function. That is the reason why he's running marathons.
Right. But when we talk about frailty, right, that's something I think that scares most of us. As we age, we become frail, right? Can we reverse it? Can you give some examples where we need not become frail as we age?
We definitely need not become frail as we age. Frailty is not a destiny and it's not inevitable. We can work on it. I'm saying it because when we talk about movement, how a human body moves, it's not just about musculoskeletal system because everything is talking to each other. All the systems talk to each other. Muscle, bone, gut, liver, brain, everything talks to each other. So when a person is more active, more mobile, is stressing his or her bones and muscles. That means there is a stressor. That means there is a hormetic activity. That means it is telling the body you need to make more muscle fibers. Okay, why are we talking about this, right? See, after the age of 35, we all know our type 2 muscle fibers, which are the fast switch fibers, they decline first. So agility declines first.
Right.
Since muscle is declining, we develop something called sarcopenia. And since function of the muscle is declining, we call it dynapenia. So we lose in muscle, we lose in function I mean, if we are not doing anything about it, then, and you are adding a lot of trouble to yourself by being more sedentary, by being more inactive, that means you're accumulating a lot of damage around your cartilage because cartilage is avascular. Cartilage is not supplied with blood vessels. Then how is cartilage growing? It's because of the pressure between the joints. The more compression and decompression that happens between the joints, that is how cartilage will get information that it needs to repair and regrow. So, but if you're not doing that, it's a overload of the body, then that is how the cartilage is only being damaged and not being repaired. So that is happening. And when you're training your muscle, when you're doing some kind of resistance exercise, your muscle will get information that I need to release myokines. Your bone will receive information, I need to release osteokines. That means the osteocalcin from the bones and the myokines like interleukin 6, etc., will activate those areas in the brain where you are becoming more cognitively active. So you're not strength training just for your muscle, just for your looks, but you are strength training just to keep that posture aligned, just to keep that balance aligned, just to tell your brain that you need to function with high cognitive ability. So all these best things happen, and that is just with simple hack called strength training. But is that enough? No, there's the other things that we need to do. When we're talking about adults who are doing wonders in life, who are running marathons, I think they're not just doing single thing, right? They're doing many things. They're doing it more aerobics, they're doing strength training, they're eating more plant-based diet, they're being more socially, they're forming communities. They live with a passion, they live with a purpose. I think community-based living is very, very important and crucial. Purpose-driven aging is more important. So there's a purpose, there's more plant-based food, there's more, they're eating meals, being very protein aware, they're strength training. So all these things can contribute, and we can do all these things just to prove that frailty is not inevitable.
Right. Talking about mobility, they say sitting is a new smoking, right? There is also a study that says that prolonged sitting increases the risk of death by up to 40%. Can we really compare smoking and sitting?
Sitting is not intrinsically as toxic as smoking. I mean, literally, it's inaccurate. But if you look at it scientifically, prolonged sitting continuously for more than 8 hours did show that it would cause all-cause mortality. It would increase the risk of all-cause mortality. It would increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases and even diabetes, and can increase to weight gain. But why is it happening? When we sit for more than 8 hours, especially 8 to 10 hours, we all have receptors in the muscles.
Right.
So the activity of something called GLUT4 receptors come down in the muscles. That means we become more insulin resistant. Our insulin sensitivity drops. And also the lipoprotein lipase, this is a very important enzyme which makes sure we have very good lipid metabolism, right? When we sit for longer duration, its activity comes down. And we accumulate inflammation along the way. And our mitochondria, which are powerhouses to produce energy inside the cells, they don't work efficiently.
Right.
Because of all these reasons, we accumulate the damage, and our risk for diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, and obesity does increase.
So you just mentioned, how the inevitable decline or inevitable frailty need not be the way it is, right? So apart from whatever you just said, like we should do, like about like eating or strength training, etc. So someone should really consider increasing the frequency of movement also throughout the day, or can they still do strength training and finishing their 10,000 steps? Is there like, can you balance it out? Can you balance out sitting for 8 hours with strength training and walking?
Good question. I want to pull this article out from Lancet, right? It was in 2016, which said even 1 hour of walking per day doesn't fully reverse the damage of sitting more than 10 continuous hours per day.
Right.
That means the only way to break this monotony or to reduce the risk of this all-cause mortality is getting up from your chair every 30 to 45 minutes and having taking a light stroll for at least 2 to 5 minutes is a great idea.
Okay.
But if you're trying to sit continuously for 8 to 10 hours and you think you can compensate it with 1 hour of intense training, it doesn't mitigate the effect.
Okay.
So the best thing is take frequent breaks every 45 minutes and incorporate simple movements. At least short walks for 2 to 5 minutes is a great idea. That way you're including mobility between your sitting periods, between your sedentary periods. You're making your body to become more insulin sensitive. You're improving cholesterol metabolism so that your lipids will not go out of balance. We maintain what we have built during our 20s and 30s. We have to adapt to it. We have to build more resistance, more and more resilience. Because as we age, the older muscles become more resistant. We have to train it more. Our muscle protein synthesis also declines. There's something called anabolic resistance during this time. And our hormones also are declining. All the IGF-1, DHEA, testosterone. Since hormones are declining, muscles find it much harder.
Right.
And muscle protein synthesis also has come down. Now, what do we do? So, we should have a right balance between recovery, mobility, flexibility, aerobics, and strength training. So, it's important half days a week we focus on resistance training, and half days a week we work on agility, mobility, flexibility, and aerobics.
Right.
Apart from these two, since people are into 40s, our muscles need more leucine. So we need to focus on leucine rich foods.
Okay.
For example, legumes, eggs, etc. and nuts and seeds. Okay, leucine rich foods like legumes, eggs, nuts and seeds. And amount of protein intake, we should make sure at least with every meal there is 20 to 30 grams. If you're on a higher side of a body weight, you need at least 30 grams of protein per meal to unlock this anabolic resistance along with leucine rich foods. And also, since we need more support, since hormones are declining, rest and recovery is important. You need to focus more on your REM sleep and deep sleep because that is where your growth hormone acts. That is where your growth hormone will encourage your IGF-1 also to improve and recover.
So sleep becomes more
So
important.
sleep becomes more
in our
important
40s.
once you hit 40s.
Right.
And also it's important we maintain this neuromuscular balance. We focus on dual task training.
Okay.
That is, you're focusing on where you're training. So it's like mind and body training becomes very important and very crucial during this point in time.
What activities improve this mind-eye coordination?
Okay. The best things that we can do to improve our focus and work on both mind and body training is any kind of sport that involves racket. So any racket-based sports can improve our both hand-eye coordination.
Right.
That is the best thing. Also, during this time in your 40s to 60s, along with strength training, high-intensity interval training also has shown wonderful benefits. So adding once a week of HIIT also is a beneficial idea. But if you have never trained in your life, go ahead and start off with high-intensity interval training. It is a nice add-on. Once you get used to your aerobic training, once you get used to your flexibility, mobility, and strength training, that would be a great idea to add on. But ultimately, what are the things that we are trying to resist and still trying to build on is, despite decreasing stem cells in muscle cells, despite decreasing muscle protein synthesis, despite the natural decline in the muscle loss that happens after the age of 40, which is nearly 1% by every year, we are trying to challenge all these three changes and still we are trying to improve protein intake, improve leucine rich food, improve rest and recovery, improve deep sleep, focus on high intensity interval training and strength training. By doing all these things, we are trying to maintain the resilience, trying to maintain the capital that we built in our 20s and 30s so that we are ready for our 70s next.
Right. So we are challenging that inevitable
Yes.
decline that people talk about.
Yes.
Before we move on, can you also explain what is osteopenia and osteoporosis?
Osteopenia is basically a decline in bone mineral density. Okay. Osteoporosis is when the bone mineral density has declined to an extent where your risk of fracture increases.
Okay.
Most of the time, this risk can increase in spine, hip.
But nowadays, I see people in their 30s as well who have osteopenia. But most of the time, I see this when these individuals are very leucine deficient, protein deficient. They don't stress their muscle or bone enough, like they have not strength trained. These are the individuals I see more osteopenia nowadays compared to when it has to be expected. Usually, in women who are not in their perimenopause, in their menopause, the chances of them having osteopenia is very less. But it is a very natural pattern to see that women in the perimenopause and menopause have osteopenia as well and sarcopenia as well, which is the decline in the bone mineral density and also decline in the muscle function and this loss of muscle as well.
Okay. But these conditions are reversible with like lifestyle changes.
With a lot of nutritional and lifestyle changes, osteopenia is most of the time reversible. But when you have osteoporosis, we need to add medical intervention and pharmaceutical intervention as well, along with lifestyle and nutritional changes.
Got it. Moving on to 60s, what should we do after 60?
Now, our agenda is to de-stratify the risk or decumulation of the risk once you cross 60s.
Right.
The number of challenges, right, after you cross 60s. Number one, your muscle protein synthesis has declined so much. Your hormones have declined. You have lost type 2 muscle fibers, and nutrient sensing has declined. Vitamin and mineral absorption has declined. Gut health has declined. Despite all these challenges, we have to work little more harder, little more smarter, I would say, to maintain the capital that you were maintaining during your 40s. To work on top, number one, how do we challenge anabolic resistance that increases at 60s? That is because our muscle protein synthesis has come down. There is anabolically more resistance, but because you have no support of the hormones. Hormones have declined too. Now, how do we challenge this scenario? These individuals need more leucine, and they need at least 30 grams of protein every meal that they eat, but it has to be distributed across the day.
Right.
And also, if their renal function is preserved, branched chain BCAAs can help. But if their renal function is compromised, then we have to only focus on essential amino acids and leucine.
Okay.
This is on one end of the spectrum. And second is their mitochondrial function also is declining. That means the cells are producing very less energy compared to the 50s. Now, what do we do to stimulate energy production inside the cells? They need good red light exposure, that is morning sunlight. They need good molecules like PQQ and ubiquinone. They need good creatine for improving the muscle protein synthesis. And to challenge the loss of type 2 fibers, which are the fast twitch fibers, and people lose type 2 fibers when they're aging, there are some compensatory mechanisms we can use. What are they? Because these people are more vulnerable to age-related atrophy than type 1 fibers.
Right.
What is more critical for these people is 1, power, 2, responses, reflexes, 3, balance. So their balance start to tilt, their reflexes slow down, and their power slows down because they are declining the type 2 fibers after age 60. But there are some things that they can do. Number one is power training, where light to moderate weights. That is, if they do at least 30 to 50% of their repetitive movement with explosive concentric movements, that can improve their reflexes. And even fast step ups, and even medicine throw balls. These are some techniques where the power can be improved despite the loss of type 2 fibers. And second thing, what can improve during this period is dual task training. Again, we're talking about neuromuscular coordination training. Dual task training, like you're walking and also you're cognitively challenged, or you're answering some questions and then you're working with the balls at the same time. Your mind and body at the same time working together is called dual task training. That would improve their reflexes as well and balance as well. Most of the time we hear about people falling off because they lost proprioception. What is proprioception? Poor proprioception means they do not know where they are standing or their position. That would increase their fall risk.
Correct, yeah.
So for them, the training should include more on balance, more on posture, more on functional strength, and also grip strength should be improved. This is the reason why all men and women should work on improving grip strength. It could be dead hangs or farmers carriers. The more they improve grip strength, the better are their functional markers, better is their functional strength, better is their alignment, and their risk of falling reduces.
Talking about risk of fall, right? We see like older people falling, and then especially these fatal hip fractures, etc. So to reduce that, is there like a special or different kind of training needed to protect the hip from getting fractured?
If people are falling more often while they are aging, it means they have lost alignment, they have lost their balance, they have lost their proprioception, they don't have enough strength, or they have sarcopenia, or they have osteopenia. There could be any of these things. So they should work on building muscle, they should work on strength training, they should work on dual thrust training where they're challenging cognitively as well, and they're improving hand-eye coordination as well, and they're working on this functional training. Apart from these things, they should also work on. There's a test called timed up and go.
Okay.
Timed up and go is the challenge given to older individuals where we check on a timer how long do they take to get up from the chair and reach a certain distance. If it is crossing more than 12 seconds, like if a person is taking more than 12 seconds to get up from the chair and reach the distance, that means the risk of fall is higher.
Okay.
So we should make sure their tug is less than 12 seconds and their grip strength is better. We should also work on their eye and foot coordination. Also, we encourage a lot of older individuals to work on dynamic balance, as simple as single leg training. Single leg stance or even Bosu ball exercises. These are some things that can improve their balance as well, muscle as well, alignment, and the risk of fall would come down.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I have one very beautiful scan document like with me that's there on your screen as well, and we'll project it on the screen for the viewers as well. It's the body composition analysis of a 22-year-old person who's very active, a 54-year-old person who's also very active, along with a similar age group of people, 50s, late 40s and 50s, who are like moderately active and inactive. Can you explain this analysis to me?
Let's talk about the first scenario where the client is 22-year-old, weighing 76 kgs, BMI is 23, falling well within the optimal range. That is the weight for his height is very ideal, and is physically very active. If you look at the total body fat percentage, which is 14%, which is well within the range and is very athletic. And if you look at the VAT mass, which is visceral adipose tissue mass falling under 500 grams, means that this person has very less risk of any kind of insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes or hypertension or even cardiovascular diseases. Why do I say so? If a person is not accumulating extra fat in the body, that means he is not consuming excess calories. Right. That means body is very metabolically active. That means whatever the person is eating, body is dispensing off. There's no need for the body to accumulate extra fat. Right? So when the visceral adipose tissue is not excess, that means this person is very metabolically active, number one. And two, the bone mass is also ideal. 3, the T-score is 0.7. As much as I appreciate the body composition, which is total body fat being on the right side, VAT mass being on the right side, total lean mass is definitely on the lower side, because this person can have better lean mass, lean mass is basically the muscle mass. Having at least 65% of the total body weight, having muscle on at least 65% is a great idea. Okay. Him being on the lower side, at least 6%, will not be an immediate risk. But it's better this person starts focusing on resistance training, and also encourage this individual to improve protein intake.
Right.
I would also like to know if this person is a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. In that scenario, I would know if he's taking enough leucine-rich diet or not. Okay,
Non-vegetarian, yeah.
non-vegetarian. Okay, maybe gut is issue, absorption is the issue, or undernutrition is the issue, and also mineralization is the issue because T score is less than 1, which means mineralization could have been even better. So I think this person could be at risk of deficiencies like vitamin D or magnesium.
Got it. When we compare this with people who are in their late 40s and 50s.
Okay, let's look at the individual who is in the whose age is 54,
Right.
weighing 71 kgs, BMI being 22.8, which means the person is weighing adequately for the height and is moderately active. Let's
Right.
decode the body composition. The total body fat percentage is 12.7, very athletic. And because for men, we expect it to be at least between 14 to 20%, and being on a little lower side means this person could be very athletic, very physically active, or maybe into sports. Total bone mass is fantastic. Total lean mass is 83%. That means out of 70 kgs that this person is weighing, 80% is coming from the lean mass, which is the best thing, right? That this person is having very robust metabolic engine.
Right.
That's fantastic. And VAT mass is very well under 500 grams, which is what we all want. I think I would give a perfect score of more than 9.5 out of 10 for this individual.
Okay.
Great place to be at this age, that too at age of 54, when this person is having a natural decline in the hormones, when this person is having a natural decline in the muscle protein synthesis, despite there is decline in the mitochondrial health, this person is building the resilience. I think he's investing in the capital better, I would say.
Same, let's compare it with a sedentary, inactive person in a very similar age group.
Okay. Let's look at the fourth image, which is about a 48-year-old person who is inactive, BMI 31, which clearly shows that person is overweight for his height. Total body fat percentage is about 35, which is 15% more body fat, which would increase the stress on his knees. I would also know this person is very metabolically inactive person. Though bone mineral density is good, bone mass is good, what this person can improve on is definitely insulin resistance. That I would definitely think this person is insulin resistant because of the higher visceral adipose tissue mass, which is about 1300 grams,
Right.
which is about 800 grams more. I think this person has accumulated this visceral adipose tissue, which is in excess, either because of being sedentary, either over consuming a lot of sugars or carbohydrates, or under nourishing with protein, under nourishing with leucine, not strength training, not physically active. These could be the challenges this person is going through. Also, in addition, I would think this person has certain deficiency in B12, folate, magnesium, or chromium.
Right. Also, I think there is very interesting thing that most of the people's BMI is very similar, but body composition is like very different.
BMI, which is body mass index, gives a very different story of an individual. It will only allow us to understand what is the weight of a person given his height.
Right.
But we do not know what is the contribution of the weight. Is it fat predominant, muscle predominant? How is the bone mass? We wouldn't understand any of it. So the best way to analyze a person is what is your body composition? What are you made of? Not what your weight is.
Right.
I think we should weight BMI makes sense only for an individual who is very overweight, who is in obesity grade 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
Once a person reaches a zone of normal BMI, it is a very different stories, because I have seen individuals who have normal BMI but high visceral adipose tissue. I've also seen individuals who are very high, who have higher BMI but have very less adipose tissue and good lean mass. So I think most of the time BMI gives a wrong metric. So the best way to look forward is to get bone to understand body composition via DEXA scan.
Got it. And people who cross 30s, right? We all usually normalize these back aches and back issues, right? So, is there a way to undo that or like reverse these? What should one do to have like a very healthy spine and not have any back issues?
Okay, we're talking about back. Most of the time, people who have low back issues are the people who have vitamin deficiencies, more commonly vitamin D deficiency. These are the people who are mostly sedentary, who have not trained their lower back or hamstrings or their gluteus muscles, or their alignment or posture is wrong. So basically, they have to work on their posture, alignment, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and building on their strength in glutes and hamstrings.
Because that's one reason that really changes the quality of life. It decreases the quality of life. Having back issues is, I think, the worst thing at least a 30-40-year-old can have. Great. So you're just talking about vitamin D, right? What are the other non-negotiable nutrients and vitamins needed to protect the musculoskeletal health?
What do we need to improve musculoskeletal health? Number one, we need good vitamin D. We need good balance of vitamins and minerals like calcium, phosphate, magnesium, chromium, and zinc. And we also need good hormonal balance, which can be balanced with good sleep, sometimes some herbs, most of the time with strength training, good recovery with sleep. Some fasting protocols do help people to recover better. Also, we need good protein intake along with leucine. We need creatine as well, especially for people who are aging because their muscle phosphokinase levels come down and we need to build that. We need more creatine phosphokinase in the muscle. So creatine would be a great component to add on, not just for muscle health, but also for brain health.
So, to summarize, if I want to stay sharp, strong, and functionally independent when I turn 70, what are the top things I need to keep a track? Meaning, like, what do I test for? And what are the top things I need to start doing right now?
I think keep a track on your vitamins and minerals like D3, K2, calcium, phosphate, magnesium, zinc, your omega 3s as well, and your protein intake. And keep testing for your inflammatory markers, IL-6, CRP, check for your hormonal balances, check for your free testosterone, DHT, IGF levels, DHEA, cortisol. Check your DEXA scan to understand what are you at risk for and what are you made of. Keep a track on your HRV, which is a very important marker for your recovery. Keep building your VO2 max, which is a very important marker for your cardiometabolic health. So also keep a track on your grip strength. That is again very important.
And what are the top things I should start like doing now?
The things that we all should start doing are strength training, power training. Importantly, train all your muscles in the body, not just upper body. Include more bone supporting nutrition, include fasting protocols, track your sleep, recover better, track your HRV. Focus on leucine rich foods, focus more on vegan or Mediterranean based, more plant based diets, also focusing on your protein intake. Also, not to forget, focus on flexibility, mobility, posture, and agility. We simplify complex health topics into simple, actionable insights to help you age better. For more such informational videos, please subscribe to PMX Health.